There's an ideology behind VIP. There's methodologies. VIP is a skill. Are lines being crossed? 100%. Will anyone ever admit to crossing those lines? Absolutely not.
Welcome everybody to another episode of CEO Open Mic. Today we're hosting Gali Hartuv, iGaming idol for VIP prize winner, person who's been silenced for 11 years and only now talks loudly about what he's seen in our business, and a person who's seen most of the world. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Bartek. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, so let's start with from the very beginning. How did you get into iGaming? After all, after all those years, it's easy to forget that, but how did beginnings look like?
I love this question because it was a mistake. It was by chance. It was never planned. I was fresh out of university. I was working in a private poker club that I had bought in after leaving university. After a year just over a year of running this poker club, I sold my stake in the club, and one of my VIP clients said to me, Gali, we've loved these games. We've loved the private games that you've hosted. Picture, just for context, like a mini Molly's game. And he's like, be at this address on Friday. I need you to meet some people. And I was like, okay, cool. I have no idea what this guy did or where I was going. And next thing, I show up to this giant building in a really affluent area, business area. And he invited me for an interview that I wasn't told about. And I sit around in this speed dating kind of setting, and I meet these people, and some guy says to me, so what do you want to do? And I was like, I'll be honest, I have no idea what you do. And he's like, well, we do online betting. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know, what are my options? He's like, well, we have casino, sportsbook, and bingo. I was like, well, I'll be honest, I'm not very interested in bingo. And coming from poker, and casino and poker for me are quite close at the moment. Sports is where it's at. Very passionate about sports, love sports. I would be interested in sports. He's like, great. Well, we have the sports brand, maybe you've heard of us, called Betway. And I was like, at that time, I'd never heard of Betway. And, a few days later, I got a job offer. A few weeks into it, we were discussing establishing VIP as a function in South Africa. Fast forward, almost 4 years later, working with Betway. And I was the VIP coordinator, and I never looked back. And we're now going on 13 years in the industry. Having traveled the world, worked for quite a bunch of operators globally. And it just kind of happened, be there on Friday. We want someone like you. And I was like, cool. Never thought twice about questioning a VIP client. Just so happened he was one of the executives at Betway, and I got the job. Right place, right time.
Yeah, exactly. Let me come back to the poker club you mentioned. So where did the idea come from? Did you play poker before and you wanted to have a club, or was it just about money?
Well, I've been playing poker since I was around 13. I discovered the game when I was 13 years old. I fell in love with the game, Texas Hold'em specifically. At 16, I started playing a lot more. I started going and playing with some groups of friends, just like kind of friendly games. When I was 18, I started playing poker in the casinos and more private games. And then I went to university, which was outside of my city, and I kind of stayed away from poker for a few years. There was a poker club in my city at the time before poker regulation tightened. And it was run by these two guys that I knew from the scene, and they ran into a little bit of a money problem. They already had the club; they were quite connected. People knew about this club. In my opinion, it wasn't well run, and a family friend approached my father, actually saying, "Would you like to buy a 50% stake with us? We're looking for a business venture for our son." The family friend's son was a couple years older than I was. And my father came to me and said, would you like to run the business? And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I need to be invested. I want to be a partial owner. So I took a loan from my father and I bought into the club as a 50% stake, and the family friend and their son bought the other 50% stake. So it was a dual venture. And that's how we got into it. We love poker. My father's still very active, travels the world playing poker. I don't travel to play. I play when I'm on work trips or when I have the opportunity. Um, but that's how we got into it. It was just we were approached with an opportunity to buy out the previous owners that ran into some trouble, and it was the best decision that could have been made. I mean, I was young. I was 21 years old when I was running this poker club.
That's amazing.
So it was an incredible opportunity, and this is why I say it was kind of like a mini Molly's game. So if anyone is familiar with Molly's game, they know what I'm talking about. If not, you should watch the movie. And yeah, it was a great experience.
So what I'm really asking here is you got into iGaming or basically gambling sector because that was physical at first because you liked poker, you understood it, and you wanted like to be more in it. So fast forward to today, what I witness on a market is that there's a lot of people in our sector who talk a lot about iGaming. They talk a lot about casinos or betting or you name it, but they don't really play. It's I have a feeling that they are in the business because of money or because of I don't know
Yeah.
opportunities to travel around the world and be on nice events and all that. Uh, but when it comes to really understanding what's going on, why the people are actually playing that particular game and not the other one, or that particular casino and not the other one, they don't know. The question I have here is: would you say, from your perspective, from all your experience that you have nowadays, would you say that if you really want to do a career, if you really want to do good business in that sector, in that industry, do you have to be a player or you don't really have to?
Don't think you have to be a player in the sense that you're committing an extensive amount of money with an objective of making money. There are a ton of providers out there that give you an opportunity to demo games and play for free, and you don't have to gamble to understand your product. I mean, from my side, I don't gamble a lot at all. I play poker. I like poker. I will take a sports bet when I see good value. I love roulette, and I enjoy blackjack if I'm going to play casino games. I'm not a slots player at all, but I need to remain up to date with what is going on there, especially because a lot of my clients are casino operators. So it would make very little sense for me to be trying to advise on game suggestions or engagement strategies, and I have no idea what the game is. Or someone starts talking to me about new features or crash games, and I've never played one. So, of course, in that sense, depending on the line of work, you need a finger on the pulse. You need to be connected. And for me, that I stay connected. And again, it's not to sign up to an operator to gamble with my own money. In some cases, my clients give me a test account and load it with credit. And I just go and I test the games and I get the user experience on their platform. There are multiple ways to stay connected. And I think it's massively beneficial if you do, especially in our line of work, so that you are informed.
You said to be able to advise your clients. So what exactly is that what you do nowadays after you said 13 years, right?
Yeah. So today I'm the CEO of Warrior Lab. We're a management consultancy for the iGaming, social gaming, and sweepstakes industries. We operate on a global scale as a resource consultancy. So as opposed to a managed services or an outsourced agency, Warrior Lab as a resource consultancy, we work side by side as a support to our clients' internal teams or internal resources. We approach things in a way where our objective is to help our clients to become more independent rather than dependent. So there's no subscription model, there's no migration of anything onto any platform. Our job is effectively to come and advise, optimize, improve, and train our clients to be better, to be more competitive, and to be more successful. We're in our third year operating now. Warrior Lab was born during the pandemic, when chaos was everywhere and sports stopped existing for a period. And what happened was, I mean, VIP, just to put it into context, VIP has always been my background. I've spent 13 years in the VIP space, built programs all over the world. And I was getting contacted quite aggressively during the pandemic from people that I knew in the VIP community saying, we don't know what to do. Our product is struggling. Our sportsbook doesn't exist anymore. We weren't equipped for casino. Our VIPs are leaving us at an alarming rate. And it showed me that there was an opportunity to try, for my own sake, to become independent. And I left my role as head of global operations and customer engagement at the time. I was working for 10bet. I was running their global ops and customer facing teams. And I started consulting where I moved to Costa Rica. I was living in Bulgaria, moved to Costa Rica. Um, and that was the start of our consultancy. We focused on the North American market. And we stayed there for around 2 years, working on the North American market as well as some European operations. And at the end of our second year, the advisory expanded. We went from just advising and consulting into training and educating. We added an audit function. And so nowadays, Warrior Lab is offering 4 verticals of service: advisory service, which is to act as a springboard to try and raise awareness with companies and try and help them know what they don't know, or to challenge what they think they know with a different perspective or use cases from other projects, to try and help operators from repeating mistakes that we've seen in the past. The other one is strategic hands-on work, where me and my team will go into an operation and work with operators to build side by side with their different teams and resources certain project functions or different tasks. The more recent expansion has been in education. We launched in August last year Gali's Guide, which is an industry blog, uh, predominantly focused on VIP as a topic because no one wanted to talk about VIP. And it's a freely available resource that we just publish content with the objective of helping the industry to elevate its standard. It's completely for free. We don't monetize it. There's no sponsorship attached to it. We don't pay to advertise it. And organically, from August till now, we've got around 1,500 monthly subscribers, which is a great testament to the value of, firstly, relevant content, but actionable content. We've also partnered with the Gaming Operations Academy, with myself as the course director, educating and training the industry on VIP, building VIP brands, building VIP programs, and the fundamentals that you need to know to build or stand out as a VIP centric brand or operator. And the last vertical that we've now expanded into in the last year or so is audits, trying to go into companies and audit certain functions or teams or projects or directions with an objective, non-biased, impartial view, that we come in and we share our expertise and we share our outlook, and we just try to share a difference of opinion. We look at different areas with fresh eyes. We outline our findings, a report, a scope of what we would recommend, and we present. And effectively, with those 4 verticals, Warrior Lab has now positioned ourselves as the full B2C optimization go-to as a consultancy. Um, it's certainly been an adventure. We've seen a lot. We have a running joke internally that we've somewhat become like the Chamber of Secrets. People confide a lot in consultants, and people open up a lot more. Of course, there's strict confidentiality, and our customers' trust is one of our most important focus areas. We operate with some pretty robust NDAs. We ensure that as we are consulting, as we're working with clients, that what we see, if we were to ever go back and reference a use case or part of a research that we do in order to improve something on a more grander scale, which is something that we're working on at the moment, no one's ever cited, no operators ever listed by name. It's more just a part of what we do. And in a nutshell, I mean, going into our third year, we've expanded our territories tenfold. I mean, we started with only North America. We're now doing North America, Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, as well as eastern parts of Asia. And it's been pretty incredible, to see this expansion, to see the type of clients that we're getting, the type of projects that we're working on just grow and adapt. No year is alike. No month is alike. Every month changes. And I would say for now where we're at, I mean that's the best summary I could probably give you.
What's really interesting for me is to learn what was your motivation, since you said that when you were, well, you are still young, but when you were younger, like 21 years old, you run your own business. Then you went to work for somebody, which I suppose gave you stability, pretty good money, I suppose, all the possibilities to grow in terms of your career. And then for some reason, you decided to throw it all away and get into your business again. What was the tipping point? Why did you do it?
I think you summarized the first part perfectly. When I had my own company, my first company, I was young. I was 21 years old. It was effectively my first professional experience in the working world. And I went in knowing nothing. It was very much a case of learn as we go, trial and error. We make the mistakes, we live with it, we roll with the punches, and we move forward. Um, you know, I still look back at that first company, and I think to myself, what would I have done differently? Would I have approached things in a different way? And you always ask yourself, what if? As a CEO, as a business owner, you're always left asking yourself questions on how you could go about doing something. The motivation for me, I've always been passionate about learning. I've always been passionate about mentorship. And for me, relationships and the relationships that I've made over the years, I've always said, some people collect cars. I collect people. I collect relationships. I travel for work. I've traveled throughout my career. I've lived in multiple countries, and I've met some incredible people along the way. A lot of those people today, I still have that relationship with, people who have mentored me and helped me in growing my career. And a lot of those people I met by exiting my company and going to work for operators and other people's companies to learn and grow myself and grow my network. Being 21, just entering the gambling industry, I knew no one. It wasn't as connected as it is today. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. Everyone was competing to be the best, to be the biggest, to make the most money. And I didn't want to put myself in a position to go into this competitive environment with such little knowledge, you know. And for me, having started my iGaming career at Betway, which today is a Goliath, it really propelled my career in a direction that I could never have, imagined. It gave me a lot of opportunity and insight into obviously the regulated market. It helped me to understand sports and casino as it was evolving. Betway was a pioneer and an innovator that has definitely added and left its mark on the industry. Um, but it also showed me a lot of things in the corporate world that I didn't like. It also showed me certain elements in these growing conglomerates that I don't agree with. And it was also one of the motivators for me leaving Betway, is that their corporate structure did no longer align with my personal morals and belief. And that led me to go and explore. I wanted to get out of South Africa, which is where I'm from. I wanted to go and see the world. I was very fortunate to have a partner that came with me, and my wife spent 5 years with me traveling the world, exploring the world, and while I worked, and she worked and freelanced for herself. And the internet is a beautiful thing. Um, and after 11 years of working with operators, building some of the most incredible projects that I could have imagined, I would say the pandemic was what changed the direction. The pandemic shook the industry to its core. It gave me a different perspective because people were actually reaching out to me saying, Gali, we need your help. And while working for an operator, I was contracted under non competes. I was not able to support the people in my network, friends of mine that I'd met over the years, even if I wanted to. And as long as I worked for an operator, I was restricted. So the motivation for me was twofold. I was presented with an opportunity to immediately jump into consulting. The projects were lining up, the clients were people that I knew and trusted. And I suppose in many cases, when you start a business, it doesn't really fall so much in front of you. It's really like an uphill battle. It still had its uphill battle moments, but it wasn't as difficult in the beginning. The challenges came when the projects of the people I knew started to end, and you had to go out and find new clients. And that's the first challenge, I suppose, as any business will encounter, is how do you generate leads? How do you generate more work? You're no longer in the position with the safety net of an organization that just gives you work and you get paid at the end of every month. What you put in is what you get out. So I would say the real motivation, going back to the question, was I had people asking for help and I wanted to be the person to help them. And I felt comfortable and confident at the time that I'd grown myself and grown my career to the point that people saw me as someone reliable and someone credible enough to be the person who could support them as an individual without the brand or the company behind him to validate my knowledge and validate my contributions.
The moment when you started your own company, how did you approach planning side? I mean, was it like, hey, there's a bunch of people who wants my help, so here's my hourly rate and let's just do it? Or was it more structured? Was it more, did you, for instance, when did you decide to hire some people, or to, as far as I know, you partnered up with your family members? So when did that moment come?
So that came after a few months. We had always spoken about it as a family. So Warrior Lab is a family business. I work in the company with my siblings, my sister and my brother. We do have a small team that we work with, other specialists and other resources within Warrior Lab and the Warrior Lab network, that we facilitate for our various projects. The first few months was very much a figuring out period. There was no real structure. There was no order. There was no, I would say, even like consistent rate in how we were billing. Everything was on an hourly billing at that point. There was no retainer or no alternative models. It was very much a bill as an independent rather than as a company. And I think it made sense at the time as well, because we were billing for a team of one, and then a team of one grew, and it grew again. And nowadays, when we're looking at the overheads and we're looking at what is being offered when you utilize Warrior Lab services, no longer utilizing a team of one, you're utilizing a team of many. and those many come with a lot of experience, and that team is there to support the project to get the most out of it. So you're no longer just paying for an individual, you're paying for a team. So our billing structure had to obviously change. Um, and a lot of that guidance and a lot of direction came from leaning on people in the network, other people in the space, other people that had done this before, my mentors that I had acquired over the years, people that had coached me and took me under their wing were absolutely instrumental to the direction that I was taking and helped me with a lot of advice and a lot of emotional support as well. Because with any new business founder, there's a lot of moments where you completely doubt yourself. There's a lot of moments where you second guess, is this the right move? There's a big fear factor, like what if I fail? Or what happens if we don't make enough money? What about family? What about those who depend on me? What about my employees? These are all the questions any business owner asks themselves. Um, and having that core group around me and that support network, global support network, they were absolutely instrumental in getting me, my team, and the company to where it is today. Without them, I don't know what would have become of Warrior Lab, but I would say it really played a significant part having people that I could rely on, that with no hidden agenda, with only good intention, were there to support and guide with my interest at heart.
Let's talk about the difficult things, because my little personal crusade, my little mission, especially here in States, is to explain to the people that running your own business, it's not a walk in a park, right? Because the pictures you could get on social media, like take LinkedIn, everybody's super happy. Everybody's like, getting one success after another. Everybody's, well, if not rich now, they're gonna be super rich tomorrow. Um, and I can see that nobody likes to talk about the weaknesses, and nobody likes to talk about the dark sides of running your own business. So you said about the network of people that surrounded you and still surround you and help you. Uh, but what were the most difficult parts when you started your own business, when you started paying your own bills and paying salaries to other people? Could you name at least few examples of what was really difficult for you?
I think the expectation of how many hours you actually have to put in. You're going from a 40-hour week to a 60, 70-hour week. I don't think I've ever worked so hard to get something started. The 40-hour week where everyone's like, oh, thank God it's Friday. I'm so tired. That's not an option. So I would say, as a new business owner, um, I underestimated just how much work it would have been. Um, and I learned very quickly, you're going to have to make sacrifices. There were a lot of sacrifices that needed to be made in order for us to succeed. Um,
Like,
there were um, a lot of missed events, for one.
okay,
You can't go to every birthday, can't go to every family event, can't go to every conference, can't go on every vacation that you want to take. There was a lot of missed, like, personal quality time. Um, and I think that's something that weighs heavily on a new business owner or on any new founder, is that there's a lot of personal sacrifice, and the personal sacrifice extends because if you're married or if you have kids or if you have other responsibilities outside of a professional capacity, it impacts those people as well. So I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive partner that's been there through this journey. And that's something that took a lot as well, having to make sure that your own journey, your own drive, your own motivations don't dominate every aspect of your life. It is a challenge, and it is something that takes work to put pause on everything. It's really difficult to do that. Your brain is in constant overdrive. I mean, I would go to bed at night, my brain would be going. I would dream about work. I'd dream about the company. I would dream about what we were working on. I mean, in part as well, I came up with a lot of solutions while dreaming. But, the reality is that it's very difficult to switch off.
Mhm.
I would say other challenges were learning about other parts of running a company that you never had to deal with. Things like taxes, in the sense that your company just handled taxes. Your company handled whatever gains and whatever that you were making. It handled all the corporate taxes, the VAT registrations, the legal components, payroll. All those things are things as an employee doesn't even cross your mind. In addition to that, it's trying to learn new aspects to make the business more efficient. We're very spoiled in iGaming that we're technology led. We have a lot of tools, but you don't understand the first thing in most cases about the commercial costs behind all those tools that make your job so easy. And when you're starting a new company, you can't get every single tool because that's an expense that you just can't prioritize. So in the beginning, everything's very manual. Everything's very, I would say, time consuming. So one of the other challenges was, well, we know what tools we'd like. We know the cost of those tools. Now the objective becomes we need to get to a point that we can afford all those different tools to make our life easier, and that's the driving factor. Um, so I think those are just some of the key, most important challenges that we needed to overcome. And I'll summarize it once more: is just legal, tax, technical, personal balance in terms of work commitment, personal commitment, um, and then of course structure and how you structure yourself to be sustainable as well as to accommodate the people that are working within your organization.
But listening to you, I could get a false impression that most of the things that you mentioned are the challenges at the very beginning, and once you learn how to do them and how to overcome them, then it's all easy and just basically laying back, relax, and basically counting money. So, of course, taking care of the taxes and taking care of how payroll works, that's a thing that you have to learn. Then it's kind of stabilized then because it's kind of
Yeah.
handled. And then you don't really have to worry about that anymore. You just have to do it. So after those 3 years of running the business and expanding, growing the business, which of the challenges stayed with you and which of them are already solved?
I would say it was more a case of what we discovered and what we learned over time outside of just the business structure. In the beginning, you take on any business. In the beginning, you assign any client. And that was actually a mistake. We worked and we signed on some contracts that hurt us in the beginning. Clients who didn't pay, clients who had breached contracts. And at that point in time, you don't have the legal capacity to go and sue. You don't have the legal capacity to defend yourself. Um, and I think something that we learned is that not all work is good work, and not every client, whether or not they can pay or otherwise, is approaching you with the right intention. So today, some of the challenges that we encounter is trying to vet the clients that we work with to ensure that it's the right client for us. We've always been of the philosophy that we want to operate with integrity, that we want to operate transparently, that we want to operate in good faith and build relationships with our clients. And we have some unbelievable clients that we've worked with some for years. And the reality of it is that I think what we learned, and it's still a challenge, and I don't see it not being a challenge, is when do you say no to an opportunity? And when do you say no to a guaranteed contract that will pay? Because you only have so much capacity as a consultancy, and you can only charge for what you deliver. So you really do need to prioritize, and you really do need to be selective, because if you take on a bad contract or you take on a bad project, that's going to act as a blocker for a potentially great contract, because now you've committed. We've always been of the opinion that whatever we commit to, we finish. We've never really dropped out of any project or ended a contract early, not from a Warrior Lab side, unless there was some kind of issue from the client, such as non-payment or a breach of contract from the client side. And I think that's something that today is still a challenge: is when do you say no?
Definitely, create IT is in a whole different business than you are when it comes to the type of the service that we provide to the client. But still, I remember the moment, which was a couple of years ago, when we decided to get rid of some clients. I mean, we recommended some other companies to handle them because definitely, as you say, to your point, there's definitely a Pareto rule, like 20-80 rule, that 20% of the clients generate 80% of stress, and they consume most of the time of you and your people. And I remember for us, when we decided to get rid of those clients, that looked like a very difficult decision to take, and that looked like a waste of money. But at the end of the day, that freed 80% of our time and made us commit that time into existing clients. I mean, better clients and people who would really appreciate it, and that made the business blooming actually. All right. Let's talk about the VIP, since we are talking to the iGaming idol for VIP prize winner. So that would be a waste not to talk about that. So let's start from the very basic points. Let's say I'm a new operator on the market, regulated market, and I've heard there's a thing called VIP. And the only thing I know about VIPs is those are the people who play for high stakes, and I should take special care of them. What happens next?
So we've been in this position multiple times where new operators contact saying, right, we're 4 months live, we're 3 months live, we're not yet live, we want a VIP program. And a lot of the time, it's exactly as you said. The only thing that people really understand is that VIP generates money. Now, in a regulated market, more so than an unregulated market, it's far more complex than that. There is a responsible gambling, safer gambling component. There is a compliance component. There is a verification component of VIP. There are interventions. There's a player management strategy that is so specific, and it's specific by geography. There's not one strategy that can be taken. There's not one size fits all or an out of the box solution that's going to deliver you a VIP program. There are also different components when it comes to VIP, and this is where we generally get involved, is trying to educate the operator to understand that VIP is not just a magic bullet for your cash flow. VIP needs to be sustainable. VIP, and this applies across the board, it's not only regulated, but VIP is more than just a program. There's an ideology behind VIP, there's methodologies. VIP is a skill that needs to be taught. And when it's a case of outlining what's next, we always approach it from a point of structure. What are you wanting to get out of it? How are you wanting to build your brand? If you're trying to build a VIP only operation, that's fine. And they exist out there. You have these executive brands with invite only QR code access and whatever. They do exist. But the reality of it is that a business needs to clarify what they want. And the answer saying we want to make money, that's not an answer. That's an objective. The answer is how do you want to make that money? And how do you want to go about making that money? The reality is that there are people on the end of that status, and there are players with personalities and lives and interests that are playing with you for a reason. What we always do is try to explain how to keep that interest alive, how to keep those players engaged, how to manage and build structure that can facilitate growth, but at the same time, keep that personal touch and human touch that these VIP players are seeking. It's very difficult today in the market to stand out, and it's even more difficult to retain your players. And we're currently working on a poll, and well, we've done a poll, and we're working on some research now where we're unpacking the biggest challenges in VIP in the industry today. And what we found is something crazy, like over 70% of engagement that we got in this survey or in this poll stated that retaining VIPs sustainably was their biggest challenge. These type of obstacles are things that hit new operators all the time because they fall down a slippery slope of buying loyalty. And the concept of buying loyalty, it's applicable in multiple industries, but in the context of iGaming, your players are only loyal to you as long as you keep paying them to remain loyal. And the moment the money tree runs dry, those players leave you. And has a detrimental impact, not just on the operator, but the industry, where these bad practices, fueled by uneducated or potentially inexperienced operators, hurts the industry overall because now we've changed perspective and we have risen expectations of these players with money that go to other operators and demand more. And we start getting into this vicious cycle of abuser tendencies, of irresponsible practice, of we'll keep giving more and keep giving more until we start creating a dependency. And that dependency fuels irresponsible gambling. And that fuels addiction and fuels all the other things that come with it. Our objective is to avoid those situations from happening. Where do we start? We start with the education piece. Do you understand what VIP is? Do you understand what goes into managing VIP? And once we answer those questions, then we can start unpacking how to build a program.
My impression on the market, correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert here, but my impression on the market is that there's a bunch of A players who are thinking about VIP retention either in responsible or irresponsible way, as you said, but it's all about pretty advanced techniques and pretty like rolling out all the new programs and rolling out all the new benefits or like ways to keep the players. But my impression is that most of the market is a type of the game where who makes less mistakes wins. What I'm trying to say is that it's not really about having a better offer for the players, but it's more about uh, having my platform even working, like having the platform available 24/7, because that seems obvious, but it's not. Or
Yeah.
if I go to the support with any type of the problem that I have, would there be anybody actually willing to solve my problem? Uh, because in my impression is that in most of the cases, there's none. I mean, there is some support line because there has to be some, but nobody care about that, about the quality of the service that is being provided. Would you say that impression is correct or no?
I'd say it's partially correct. Um, I agree with you that when it comes down to trying to set yourself to stand out as a VIP centric or VIP capable brand, there's a lot of corners that get cut. A lot of operators just want to go to market. They just want to start making money. They just want to start seeing a return on their investment. And often what happens is we cut corners. And many times those corners are part of the foundation that we're building on. VIP can't have a rocky foundation. VIP is not just some glorified, elevated customer support function, and it's certainly not some automated CRM function. So the reality of it is that you're 100% right. Like 24/7, 365, the product is working. But when it comes to VIPs are very simple when you break down their demands. I want to get paid quickly. I want to play when I want to play. I want to be able to contact you when I want to contact you on the channel that I prefer. And you need to be available for me when I need you. And those are the basic principles and demands of the average VIP player. In addition to all of those, I want you to speak to me and manage me and treat me as a person. Don't treat me as a statistic. Don't treat me as some cash generator, because at the end of the day, I get that in every other aspect of my life. The bank, the credit card companies, the tourism agency, whatever it is, everyone is giving me special treatment because they know I have money. And even though I like the treatment, even though I like the acknowledgement, sometimes I just need an escape. Sometimes I just need someone that I can tell I had a bad day. I had a rough day. I had a bad time at work. I always joke when I run a training that VIP and account management, we are like the bartenders of the iGaming industry. And that's because we hear a lot of things from VIP players. Sometimes they just need someone to listen. That's all it really is.
Tell me the most horrifying stories that you've heard, because I suppose there are plenty of them, right?
They are. I'm just trying to think which ones I can tell you that won't get me into trouble. No, look, I mean, I'll tell you more of a fun, playful one. I mean, going back to when I used to manage VIP players, I had an incredible VIP player. He was a character. And I got a frantic call from him on Valentine's Day one year. And he's like, Gali, I need your help. And I'm like, oh my God, something has happened. And he's like, seriously, I need your help or I'm dead. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not good. There's like responsible gambling. Something's happening. And he's like, I completely forgot to buy my wife a Valentine's Day gift. I'm like, oh God, okay. So firstly, crisis averted. My heartbeat, dropped 30 beats a minute. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want? He's like, I don't care what you have to do. Just get it done. So I knew where he lived, obviously. I said, what is your wife like? He gave me some ideas. And I contacted some agency. I bought something like 24 red roses, some really expensive chocolates. And I got a handwritten card done where I wrote the card to his wife. And of course, signed it as my player. Didn't hear from the player for 48 hours. And suddenly I get a call. And he goes, Gali, oh, you won't believe it. Amazing. She loved it. She thanked me. I was the best husband ever. I owe you one. I owe you one. And I was like, okay, so cool. I've done my job. But the reality is, a lot of these players, they're so caught up in their life that, like we mentioned in the beginning, they forget about the personal aspect. Mm-hmm. I've had players as well that get very attached. I had a case where, while I was actually working at Betway, a very, very wealthy individual contacted me saying, Gali, I'd like to send you a Christmas gift. Now, when you're managing players, you can't accept gifts. And that's largely down to the fact that, firstly, there are regulations around bribery that you need to be very cautious of, especially in a regulated market. And you never want to be in a position that a VIP is of the mindset that you owe them something because they did something for you. And this VIP was adamant, Gali, I'm sending you a Christmas gift. This is not it's not up for negotiation. Like, I'm going to do something for you. Long story short, the business said no. And the VIP said, well, if you're not going to allow me to give my appreciation to my host, just close my account. And it's the first time ever I had a VIP threaten a company because I wouldn't be able to accept a gift. Um, Eventually, our legal team had to draft a waiver for the player to sign that acknowledges that this is nothing to do with Betway. This is purely one person to another, that there was no debt, that nothing to do with this gift could ever be brought into a Betway conversation. And in addition to that, it couldn't exceed £100.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some very specific guidelines, which the player accepted. I got my gift in the end. Unfortunately, it was a Manchester United jersey, and I'm a Liverpool fan. so,
Whoops.
so you know, I suppose it's the thought that counts. But there've been some interesting stories. I mean, at the same time, when you're out in the field and you're managing players and you're managing VIPs, you see a lot of things as well. Confidentiality is, of course, very key, but you know, you would entertain players at an event, and next thing they tell you, well, come, let's go to the casino, or why don't you come? We're going to go to the gentleman's club, or whatever it is. And the reality is, you have to understand where to draw the line. You have to understand when to say no as well. You're still a representative of your business. You're still a brand ambassador. And I've heard some horror stories of account managers taking things far too far. Um, don't know how PC stories need to be, but I can give you one of the more extreme cases of some affair love circle that occurred a few years ago with a specific operator. Several of their account managers were sleeping with players for cash incentives from the players paying account managers. Word broke out. It was actually picked up in a QA. And of course, a massive, massive investigation was had, and all account managers were let go from this particular book. And a lot of hush money had to get paid to these players. This is a number of years ago. The reality is, most of these players were married. Most of these players, in being in this situation, expected certain privileges and bonuses because they had handed out large sums of cash to these account managers. And the reality is that in VIP, it's not all glamour. There's a very dark side to VIP as well. There's a very manipulative side to VIP. A lot of VIP players are not used to being told no, and a lot of VIP players are not used to not getting what they want. So much so that there are various protocols in many companies that I've worked with, where, for example, a female account manager or even two female account managers will never go to an event without a male account manager accompanying them to that event because of some of the horror stories that have come out of the VIP space. And these are just things that companies also need to take into account. I won't go down the route of sharing some of the horror stories, but we'll draw the line at the swingers circle of operator and player. But the reality is that there are good stories, there are bad stories, and then there's stories that we don't want to be sharing again. Operators need to be mindful that it's not always going to be positive. You need to be prepared for those negatives as well.
Yeah, but what you said, definitely there is a thin line of some kind of morality, which the things which are still legal or could be perceived as legal, but you wouldn't really advise to do them because of how it influences the brand, or how it influences the work atmosphere after we cross certain lines. Uh, I'm not asking about any names here, but if you were to say, looking from your perspective, looking from all the experience that you have, how often the line is being crossed in the market in general.
I wouldn't say it's crossed too regularly, especially not in a regulated market. The unregulated market, it's crossed far more, more frequently than what you would find in regulated. Um, are lines being crossed? 100%. Will anyone ever admit to crossing those lines? Absolutely not.
Yep.
And that's just the reality and the nature of VIP within the industry. A lot of companies will go over and beyond to do whatever is necessary to make a VIP happy, be it that they have to cross the line, be it that it's not necessarily legal. Operators do go over and beyond for certain VIP players, and that's because the monetary component generally supersedes the moral component.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think as an industry, even in our reputation, is something that has always bitten us as an industry from an outside perspective, is that iGaming or gambling in general has always been met as a taboo line of work or has been met with stereotype. The reality is that not all those stereotypes that are being said are fabricated or blown out of proportion. A lot of those stereotypes that are raised do happen. So, you know, I think we in part need to take some responsibility as an industry. Um, we need to again train our people that go out in the field, that go and represent our brands, or as a business in the decisions that we make. We need to be conscious when we're crossing the line and what we're doing to rectify it.
To close that topic, to all the operators that are watching or listening to us, especially the ones who are like grasping data from the market, is there any like a typical golden rule of do's, and one golden rule for do and one golden rule for don't, that a typical operator could take, that you, even before you start working with anybody, you typically know that that will work?
Well, I've always said to account managers, don't put anything in writing that you wouldn't want your mother reading. Um, so, I think when it comes to a philosophy in how you would speak to your players, if this were to become public knowledge, do you want to be the person standing next to whatever's published? And there was a case that was published in the UK, again with an operator that I'm not going to name, where the entire exchange between the account manager and the player was published in the newspaper. And the reality is that it was a terrible PR moment for this operator because it was blatantly clear what the objective was of the messages that were being sent. And it doesn't matter how you dress it up, like you're never going to come out of that looking clean. So again, the don't put something into writing that you're going to regret if it were to be made public. On the do side, I think it's always a case of, in the VIP sense, if you're going to manage players, if you're going to manage a VIP program, I'm gonna use the word don't, but it's for the do. Don't forget why you have this program and who you're catering the program for, because it's more than transactional, and that would be the do. The do is don't forget why it's there and who it's for. And I think if we can hold on to that mentality, we will be really, well, a lot more successful in how we practice, how we retain, how we grow. And we've seen it before. We've seen it with operators that have changed the ideology and the objectives internally, and the results speak for themselves.
So the key takeaways that I'm taking from today's conversation is that, first of all, when you started Warrior Labs, it wasn't that you started something unrelated to the market. It was you already had a demand for a particular service, and only then you decided to meet the demand and work under your own brand and under your own name. The second takeaway is that even though you have the demand at the beginning, it doesn't mean that it will stay forever. at some point the honeymoon will be over, and you have to think about your company as a company with sales, with deliveries, and all that. Um, the other takeaway that I'm taking is that, as you said at the very beginning, speaking of VIP programs, that you have to remember that those are people and not users, and those are not just entities in your database or money producers that you deal with. It's at the end of the day, those are real people just on the other side of the screen. So you have to think of them as people. You have to treat them as people. But still, there is a certain line which you should not cross in any case. Anything else that you'd like to highlight after today's conversation?
I think it's important that operators also understand that the way we love to throw the word collaboration around. And I think it's important just to add that when we're looking at VIP, and I mean, in the case of Warrior Lab, VIP is one of the many things that we do. Um, this collaborative fantasy that we always discuss in many operations is absent. And I think in any business, you know, I think some of the non negotiables, if we're going to succeed, it's collaboration, be it with departments that you work with directly or indirectly. There's a collaborative element, and the communication aspect. We need to put ego aside. We all have goals. We all have motivations. We all are driven towards something. But ego is a success killer, and ego is something that has generated Warrior Lab a lot of work, because the reality is, in many of the cases that we have found problems, and many of the operators that were brought in to help, a lot of the time what we find is not only are some of the blockers caused by a lack of communication or a lack of collaboration, but by ego.
Mm.
So I think if we can consider that as the last, or as an additional statement, that's something I would leave the audience with as well.
So one last question. We started today's conversation with stating that you've seen most of the world. I counted 4 countries that you lived in, but you definitely traveled more, right? And that was all for work. So the question is, does it mean that if you want to run a consulting business in iGaming, does it mean you have to travel a lot, or do you just enjoy doing that so you look for the opportunities to do it?
um, I enjoy traveling. And I really discovered traveling when my wife and I moved overseas, which was for work. But, we were just living in the center of Europe, so we had the opportunity to travel quite easily. As a consultant, do you have to travel? Not necessarily. The internet is a wonderful thing. Um, I do think it's important to be present. So, we do conferences. We don't do every conference. We're very selective, and we do travel for those conferences. But we're very selective on the conferences that we go to. When we do travel for work, it's more often than not because a client wants us to be physically present, and a client wants us on site. So, for example, in January of this year, I was in Estonia running workshops for a client. Would I have gone to Estonia if it weren't for those workshops? Probably not. But the reality is that sometimes work takes you places, and sometimes it's worthwhile going. I enjoy it. I like the adventure. Do you have to do it? Not really. If you have understanding clients and they're comfortable in a digital setting, you don't need to leave your house.
Amen. Thank you so much. That was Gali Hartuv. Thank you.